Hey everybody, welcome to Techtical Stare at the Camera and Rant Edition. Consumer market space for PC hardware is really bad right now for a plethora of reasons. We're going to go over those reasons today. We're going to explore why they are the way they are and see if we can find any bright spots on the horizon so we don't end up killing ourselves before all this is said and done. So if you can put up with another 9 minutes or so of my bald ass staring at the camera, stay tuned. Let's start off with the worst news first, and that is, of course, Vega dropping this week, and many reviews are out, and as you probably already know, it blows serious ass. Now, for a long time, NVIDIA has had pretty much rule of the roost on the high end. Since the 900 series, pretty much. AMD hasn't really fronted a hell of a lot of competition. You know, the 290X was kind of able to compete later on because of driver updates with the 980, and the 390X most certainly was. It was actually a little bit better by the time it was released, but NVIDIA's had the jump on them for a while, and come the 10 series cards, there was just no competition at all. AMD just folded their arms and fucking gave up. And this has enabled NVIDIA to have this double flagship release structure over the past 2 generations, where they put out the 980 first, which is a middle-sized die, fully unlocked, and they market that as their flagship with a big release event and press and all that. They milked that for however fucking long it was, 6 to 8 months, and then they put out the 980 Ti, which is a larger die that's slightly cut back, and market that as the flagship as at a slightly higher price, and then they usually knock the 80 version down, and you guys know how it works. They did the same with the 10 series, and they have reaped the benefits, largely because AMD has had their thumb up their ass. Vega was important because it was supposed to, at least temporarily, at least in the short term, provide some viable competition for the 1080 Ti and help keep prices for the rest of the lineup competitive. Of course, being that Vega Frontier Edition is out and sucks balls and performs somewhere between a 1070 and a 1080 in most games, things aren't looking very good. Now, before you even think it, let me address it. I know that this is technically a prosumer card at best. It's not strictly professional. It doesn't have the Fire Pro branding, but it's definitely not meant for gamers. But what you have to understand is that the GPUs, the actual silicon found in each of these products, whether it be consumer or prosumer, minus a few different configuration changes, maybe in the back end or the VRAM or whatnot, they're largely the same. This has never not been true for either AMD or NVIDIA. Now, if you're thinking the saving grace will be the clock speeds, you are wrong again, because we're already pushing 300 goddamn watts through this thing on air and 375 on water, so there's not a hell of a lot of room to go there either. Now, if you think the lack of game-ready drivers is the problem, you do have a point, but we're going to have to make up a 30 to 35% gap to get this up to where GP102 performs. You can call me a pessimist, but I don't think that's going to happen. So what that means is, in order for this card to be a success, it's going to have to be priced super aggressively, and that's not necessarily something AMD is in a position to do, because A, this chip costs a lot to develop, and B, it costs a lot to produce, being a 600mm square die in a world where silicon products are already kind of scarce thanks to shortages in supply. But even if they can manage to price it competitively and still make a product and fit it somewhere in the performance stack that makes sense, there's still the issue of that power budget, which is just really bad for graphics cards these days because of what we're going to talk about next. Shitty segue, I know, but it is the power efficiency of Polaris that makes it such a great candidate for Ethereum mining. And while it started with Polaris 10 as being the prime candidate, apparently from what I've read, the hash rate of the 1060 and 1070 per watt is actually kind of favorable as well, which is causing people to turn to those two, which is really fucking shit up. But regardless, all it takes is one card to have this abnormal price skew where people can go to retail, buy up whatever they can find there, and sell them to the public at a profit, and everything goes out of whack. Now, the reason it fucks everything up is because if you don't know anything about graphics card prices, what you're basically going to do is look up the relative performance compared to current modern products, see where it fits, and then price it according to what those sell for at retail, minus a few bucks for age and wear and tear and all that bullshit. So if you're an owner of like a GTX 770 and you look it up on Tech Power Up and you say, oh, in general it performs 60% as well as Polaris 10, I don't know, I don't have the numbers in front of me. economy, but you get the idea. And you think to yourself, well, that seems to be selling for $500 on Kijiji. I guess I'll sell this $770 for fucking $250. Now, of course, nobody in their right mind is going to pay that price for that card, but it creates a price disparity between asking and actual value, and it's very difficult to talk someone down once they've done their research. You just end up seeming like you're trying to scam them out of some money. As I've said in the past, negotiation is only successful if the two parties are relatively close in what they believe their item is worth. You got seller up here who's like, I think I can get this, but I'll go down to this. And you got buyer down here who's like, well, I'd like to pay this, but I'm willing to go up to this. And you get ever so close in negotiations to the point where the two meet and you guys can come up with a deal. But when people are starting up here and they're like, well, I know my card's worth this because assholes on the internet have told me so. And then you're like, well, actually, it's more like down here because of artificially inflated prices have it up here. And then they're only willing to go down like this far. There's a lot of room before you can get that flat. Bottom line is, everything's fucked up in the secondhand GPU market to the point where I have not purchased one in over a month. And this coming from a guy who last year in 2016 did like $55,000 in business in terms of secondhand hardware. Now, I'd like to say that the secondhand buyer blues is only limited to GPU prices, but that would be a lie because it's just totally not. DRAM prices are still insane and out of control. NAND prices are a little bit better and you can still find very affordable secondhand SSDs thanks to largely how long they've been out and how close they all perform, whether it be like a 6-year-old, you know, MLC drive or a modern TLC drive. But the bottom line is there's a lot of serious money to be spent if you want something good. Now, with regards to DRAM prices, there's always this fear of collusion, largely because it's already happened. Back in, I think it was 2003, there was a big fucking investigation by the European Union, and they fined all the major makers of DRAM and so on, and proved that they were working together to fix prices. Now, these days, I'm not necessarily saying that you should take your eyes off of these companies, but the likelihood of collusion in this scenario, not very good. Back in 2003, we did not have devices in our pocket that had the same shit inside of it that's inside of our desktop computers and our laptops. Now we're having to share that stuff between all of these devices, and the stress on these fabrication plants that actually cost multi-billions of dollars to build is actually considerable. And if you do your research on the internet, you will see real, actual, like eyes-on reporting of people who have seen what goes on in these fabs and how people are being worked to the bone to get these products out. Now, NAND, which is produced largely the same way by the same players mostly, is going to be even worse going forward, and here's why. DRAM demands are relatively stable and actually pretty low. So aside from the demand for VRAM, which is the same product just with a different application, not a hell of a lot of growing need in that market space. But NAND all over the place is in demand. Anywhere from fucking professional cameras to fucking computers to phones. Everybody needs more storage, and it's because movie files are getting bigger. We're going from 1080p to 4K, or it seems 8K video in some cases, which is fucking retarded. You've got pictures that, you know, like 10 years ago, it was like the idea of 2 megapixels was foreign, and these days 20 is bare minimum. Even music, for Christ's sake. 128 kbps was like the standard MP3 bitrate back in the day when I started stealing songs off Napster. Nowadays, people are like, 320 minimum. Are you kidding me? I don't want to fucking bleed out of my ears. My ass already has enough of a problem with it. But in summary, every device in the world, including these fucking smart TVs to cars, just any electronic that has to retain and or process data needs both DRAM and NAND, and it's putting a tremendous, tremendous strain on the major makers. So what now? What do we do? Well, you may recall back when I started this channel, either in one of my Reddit posts or in my first video, I said that I had been a PC technician more or less on and off for 15 or so years. And the on and off is something I want to stress. There are periods where the market kind of cools down and conditions are not really optimal to sort of operate, where I kind of get out of it. I mean, pretty much from IV to first generation Haswell, I didn't have all that much involvement. In fact, when I came back and built a new computer, I had to go to Reddit for some advice. I was just like, have things changed in the last 2 years? Give me a heads up. you know, what are power requirements like, if there have been any serious advancements. I just like shut my brain off of the whole thing for about 2, maybe 2.5 years. So am I there yet? Not quite. I mean, I still got stuff going on. I still do repairs. I still do the odd custom job, but my deal hunting days, in at least the interim, maybe just for the summer till after my wedding, are gonna maybe cool down just a bit. Still gonna follow the market very closely, and obviously if I see deals pop up, I won't buy them. But I've had so little success lately finding things that it's just become a little discouraging. And I think that's the general piece of advice I'm trying to convey in this 10-minute video, is that sometimes you gotta cool your jets. Anyway, that doesn't mean I won't be around. Still expect videos every week for various topics. I don't just do used hardware stuff. I do market analysis and other things like that. So it's not like we're not gonna have content to fill videos. It's just really frustrating because there's not a lot of used shit floating around that I can actually make use of. So, Anyhow, follow me on Twitter at OFA. Catch me up on Steam, Reddit. Fucking find me on social media. I don't know. You know how to get a hold of me if you want me. And I'll see you in the next video.